So seriously, no joke, for a brief window of time, our GMT Game Jam submission was the 9th most popular out of over 6,000 games, which is absolutely crazy. But let's back up a little bit. I was watching the countdown timer for the theme announcement, ready to jump in and tackle the GMTK jam all on my own, when 2 minutes before the actual jam was supposed to start, my favorite artist with oil in their name DM'd me wondering if I had a partner yet. And if you've seen my videos, you know that my art is passable. Not great, not bad, passable. So now there was 2 of us. And with the countdown timer still going, we called out to our favorite musician with Lightspeed in their name and got them on board. At which point I had 2 teammates online who were going to help me make a game for an online event. And then, right before the announcement, my internet went down, which was obviously not good. So when I finally got internet back 4 hours later, firstly, my teammates laughed at me because I have terrible luck with game jams. And then secondly, I found out that the theme was Roll of the Dice. And the musician and artist had already been brainstorming for 4 hours. And I was going to be the coder. So whatever we came up with, I was going to have to be the one to bring it to life. And so I felt terrible, but all of the things they had planned on making, I had to take an axe to and bring it down to a reasonable size. So when I was done, we had a turn-based game where instead of attack, defend, some kind of scalability, you would be rolling a dice to determine the minigame you'd have to do, and if you succeeded in the minigame, you would hurt the enemy. And because we were stuck on the idea of a casino, we decided to theme it around that whole vibe. So when the musician was looking for direction, we all agreed that we wanted something between the saloon music from Stardew Valley and Cuphead. And I think those 2 things kind of stuck with both the musician and the artist. And you'll see what I mean later. So once the brainstorming phase was finally done, I got to work on the prototype, which I wanted to get all of the base functionality done with really terrible prototype art in the first night, which meant it was the first of 2 very sleepless nights. But I managed to set up 4 rooms. One was the kind of hub/store area, and then the other 3 would be rooms that you fight in. And I got the loops set up so you go through them by pressing an arrow button. And when you walk into a battle room, it would trigger a fight scene. Really bare bones stuff. But then I got to work on the mini games. The first one being Spin the Wheel, where the wheel would spin at a certain speed and you'd have to land on the right spot for it to do damage to the enemy. And other than my inability to visualize angles, this part was pretty easy. The next one was a pachinko board, or plinko, or peggle, or whatever it is you call it. And I've actually made one of these before, a full little game as a prototype for work. So this was just a done. Basically, you would drop the ball, and if it lands in the right spot, you win. Otherwise, you lose. And then the last one was actually supposed to be blackjack. And it is, basically. But I went in numerical order of the cards. So Jack is 11, Queen is 12, and King is 13, which ticked off a lot of people who knew the rules of blackjack. But that was the first day down, and I had to move forward. At the start of the second day was when I was starting to get worried. The musician wasn't done the first song, and they wanted to make 2, and the artist was still working on the very first room of the game, of which there are 3, and enemies, and UI, and everything. So,
panic.
But since I really couldn't help them with anything, I just really focused on getting the game done. So I got the health bar system working, and there was more or less a full gameplay loop going on, and by then it was about midday when the artist and musician both kind of hit their stride. The artist had finished the first room and was just cranking out art. Within 2 hours, they had all of the enemies done, and the musician gave us their first song, which was just phenomenal. And suddenly, I'm not panicking because they're not going to get it done. I'm panicking because the game now needs to live up to how good this art and music is. So I had my second coffee of the day and got back to work. With the gameplay loop done, I then needed the beginning and end of the game. So the beginning was just the bartender giving you some exposition, and you start. And then the ending was an end screen of some kind that the artist had to make. So I ended up making the beginning part, and then just made a black screen with "You win" on it. And we sent that off to some playtesters while we were working on the game. And then I saw a post from Kenny where they suggested that we use their casino sound pack. And who am I to say no? So I made an initial pass through the entire game, just slapping down sound effects based on their name from the pack. And then I played through the game and wrote down all the ones that didn't make any sense and replaced them. And this was a great way to cut down on time spent trying to find the perfect sound effect, because I only removed the ones that didn't make any sense. At this point, we were coming up on the end of the second day, and the artist had given me most of the art I needed for the game, and the musician had given us their second song, which was going to be used during the fights. At this point, we broke off into two teams. They playtested the game and gave me feedback on sound effects and bugs, and I was doing the thing that I think is the most fun. I was adding juice to everything. Everywhere I could, I added juice. Wobble when you hit the enemy, wobble when you get hit, wobble when you press the button, changing animation speeds and sound effects so they line up properly, and give you this satisfying... I mean, look at this wobble. It's so good. And then I lost like an hour straight of my time just playing with the main menu. And by the final day, we're all exhausted and hungry, but the finish line is in sight. So we spent that day fixing bugs and trying to get the length of the game down to a reasonable 10 to 15 minutes. And then about 4 hours before the deadline, I sent in the early version. It was a full game and it was complete, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. That way, if we missed the deadline or it crashes again, then at least the game will have been submitted. Then I had 3 hours to do one final pass through the game to make sure everything made sense. Tweak the sound effects and animation speeds and so on, just a little more so it all feels more polished. And then an hour before the deadline, I submitted the final build. And then I went and finally had some food. And the next day, there we were, the 9th most popular game in the Game Jam, which blew my mind. But of course, the popularity doesn't mean anything. In the end, it's all going to come down to the rankings. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons. Because of them, not only is my coffee cup full, but I can also afford creamer. And all of the cool places that I hang out are down below, and if you decide to click on one, then I'll see you there.